Hey there guys, how's it going? So yeah, I wanted to do a video and talk about this upcoming heavyweight fight. It's taking place on the undercard of Josh Taylor's unification against Regis Prograis. Now obviously, as you guys obviously know, since I did a prediction video about this before, Chisora was going to be fighting Joseph Parker in what was going to be a very interesting fight. Unfortunately, Joseph Parker has gotten himself ill and the fight's been cancelled, and David Price has stepped in to take Joseph Parker's place. And do you know, guys, David Price against Dereck Chisora, I really am looking forward to this fight. I really am. I think it's going to be very explosive. I think it's going to be entertaining. And this is actually a fight that I've wanted to see for a long time. I remember back in 2012, I was hearing rumors that this fight was going to be happening, and yeah, I was really looking forward to it even back then. So yeah, this is a fight that has been a long time coming as far as I'm concerned. I'm actually quite surprised this fight never happened sooner. But yeah, either way, it's going to be happening now. David Price is taking the fight on fairly short notice. I mean, the fight is later this month, so I mean that was quite ballsy. I mean, to face somebody like Chisora on short notice, for Price was actually quite a big gamble. But David Price is a warrior. I mean, he might not be the best fighter out there, but look, the guy's got guts. He'll take on anybody. He'll fight anybody, despite his limitations and despite his flaws as a fighter. He's a guy who's not afraid to challenge, top competition. So yeah, all credit to him for taking the fight on short notice. How do I think this one's gonna go? I have a very clear idea of how I think it's gonna go and how I think it should go. I think how this one's gonna go is I think in the early rounds, Dereck Chisora is going to be bobbing and weaving. He's going to be moving forward. He's going to be trying to work the body, and of course David Price is going to be trying to establish a jab and keep Chisora outside and try and land that long right hand. And I think Dereck Chisora is going to win the fight. I favour Dereck Chisora to win the fight quite strongly, actually. And I think that not only do I think he's going to win the fight, but I think this fight could be a brutal knockout. Dereck Chisora. Obviously, Dereck Chisora has been knocked out himself. I mean, we saw him on the canvas against Dillian White. He was also stopped late by Tyson Fury in the rematch. He was brutally knocked out by David Haye also. So Dereck Chisora himself has shown some vulnerabilities, but for the most part, Dereck Chisora has shown a solid chin. When he's not fighting somebody who's a top concussive puncher, when he's fighting somebody who is a little bit more workmanlike, he tends to either go the distance or he tends to at least give a good account of himself. I mean, David Price is a big puncher, don't get me wrong, he's got a lot of power, but David Price isn't really that consistent with his power. He's a guy who hits hard early, but doesn't really carry that power late due to his lack of stamina. Now, Dereck Chisora has got excellent stamina for a heavyweight. Even when Dereck Chisora isn't in shape, like when he shows up out of shape, he can still go 12 rounds at a fairly decent pace. David Price, on the other hand, struggles to go late in fights, even at his own pace. And I know some of you are going to say, oh, what about, in his last fight against Dave Allen? Dave Allen isn't really a pressure fighter. Dave Allen's a guy who, yeah, he obviously comes forward and he throws punches and tries to knock you out and has got a little bit of power, but he doesn't really have that, mental pressure that somebody like Chisora puts on you. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Dereck Chisora, you guys might recall, fought Vitaly Klitschko back in 2012. And although he lost that fight quite badly, I've got the fight on my channel in HD. And yeah, Vitaly won pretty much every round. But look how hard Vitaly Klitschko had to work in that fight. Look how gassed he was in the later rounds. He was actually a lot more tired in that fight and had to work a lot harder in order to keep his lead than he did in most of his fights, a lot more than he was used to. And the reason for it is Dereck Chisora, when he fights and when he's motivated, he's a guy who's very good putting on the mental pressure. He'll come forward, he'll slip your punches, he takes what you have to give, because he's got a good chin. He works the body, and he also puts a lot of, there's a lot of mind games from Chisora in there. Like he'll make faces, he'll stick his tongue at you, and he'll step off to the side and he'll let you get a shot in and that, and he'll just laugh at you, and then he'll go back to working your body. He'll also do things inside, like he'll use his forearms, he'll like shove his palm in your face, and he does a lot of like roughhouse shit, Dereck Chisora, and he's a guy who he's a nightmare for anybody to fight just based on his pure work rate and his pure pressure and it's that work rate and pressure and that sort of that hard man mentality which I think David Price is going to struggle with in this fight because I mean obviously it's one thing fighting somebody like Vitaly Klitschko or Tyson Fury even when Chisora fought Tyson Fury in the first fight he put a lot of pressure on him, he hurt Fury a couple of times and Fury had to hold and lean a lot in order to keep his lead in that fight, so he had to work a lot harder than usual. It's going to be different with somebody like David Price because David Price doesn't generally have the stamina to go 12 rounds. Let's say if Chisora puts the kind of pressure on David Price that he put on one of these other guys like Klitschko or Pulev or Fury, I don't think that David Price is going to have the mental, the mental stamina as well as the physical stamina to work hard for 12 rounds and keep Chisora off him and just keep boxing and keep chipping away. I don't think David Price has that level of stamina. I think David Price will probably get worn down somewhere about the 5th to the 7th round. I think this fight could look quite similar to the Tony Thompson fight, the rematch, where David Price was actually winning the fight. He put Tony Thompson down. He was keeping him on the outside and he was hurting him, but Tony Thompson was never really fully phased. Like he was always cognitive of the fact that David Price would wear down at some point and that David Price's stamina was an issue. So he just kept chipping away at Price and he ended up breaking him down. Price ran out of gas and Price got stopped. And Price has been in that situation numerous times now. If you look at how he was against Christian Hammer, he was winning that fight. He scored a knockdown in that fight. And ended up getting taken out in the 7th due to pure exhaustion. When he fought Povetkin, similar situation to the Christian Hammer fight. He had some success. He did manage to hurt Povetkin with a big left hook. Was trying to measure him up for that long right hand, but Povetkin just managed to break him down and brutally knocked him out in the 5th when Price started to gas. And when Povetkin would whip in those hooks to the body, you could just see Price, gasping for air. David Price really doesn't take body shots that well, and he doesn't take any shots very well. He's just not a very durable fighter, and I know he has looked pretty good in his last couple of fights, like against Cash Ali and um, against Tom Little and Dave Allen, but those are domestic level fighters, and I think Dereck Chisora is a little slight bit above domestic level. I'd say he's European level, so I think David Price is going to have problems here. It's been proven time and time again that when you put pressure on David Price, he isn't very difficult to stop. I mean, Erkan Tepe knocked him out early. Like I said, Povetkin, Hammer, Tony Thompson, all of those guys were able to, pressure David Price and break him down. Even Sergey Kuzmin, who we've seen recently, isn't even that impressive. Sergey Kuzmin was able to force David Price to pull out in 4 rounds, and I know there was an injury there, but still, I think the body shots and the pressure from Kuzmin was really what got to Price. So I think Dereck Chisora should pressure David Price. I think that the body shots from Dereck Chisora in the early rounds will set him up for a mid to late knockout. I could see Chisora landing one of them big left hooks or one of them big overhand rights and just putting David Price down as Price starts to gas. And I'm going to go for Dereck Chisora to win this fight by a 5th to 7th round stoppage. I think it's going to be nip and tuck early on. I think Price will have a little bit of success in the early rounds, meaning like the first 4 rounds or so. I could see Price having some success and maybe even stunning Dereck Chisora, or maybe potentially even knocking Dereck Chisora down. I could totally see that. But I think even if Dereck Chisora does get knocked down, I could see him getting up and I could see him still forcing a stoppage and stopping David Price in the mid to late rounds. So this is a good fight. It's an entertaining fight as far as I'm concerned. It's a fight that definitely will be intriguing to watch for however long it lasts, which might not be long. Maybe David Price shocks us. Maybe his power in the first round gets to Dereck Chisora, and maybe he's able to stop Chisora in the first 4 rounds. I don't know, but I can't see that happening. And if the fight goes past 4 rounds, I can see Dereck Chisora's stamina and his chin being the difference, and Dereck Chisora will just pressure David Price. David Price will struggle with the pace. He'll struggle with the body shots. Because he really doesn't like to take body shots. He really doesn't deal well with pressure in the ring. So I think this is going to be. I don't think it's going to be one-sided. That's the thing. I think Chisora will win, and I think Chisora will win by stoppage. But as long as it lasts, I don't think it's going to be that one-sided. As long as it lasts, I do think David Price will have a puncher's chance, because of his size advantage and whatnot. But Dereck Chisora has always shown that he's quite adept at fighting taller guys. I mean, he has lost to taller guys. Like I mentioned, he lost to Klitschko, Hellenius, Pulev, Fury twice. He's lost to taller fighters, but he's always given them some problems, and he's always pressured them and had his moments here and there, and been able to force them onto the back foot and things like that. So Chisora has had success against taller guys who also hit very hard, and he's gone the distance against very big punchers. I mean, Hellenius was a big puncher, Vitaly Klitschko was a big puncher. All of those guys could punch, and Chisora has always shown a good enough chin to at least make his fights fairly competitive. So I think that David Price, whereas I do give David Price a puncher's chance, I do think that in the first few rounds that there's definitely a chance of an upset, chance of a knockout early on. But what also makes me favour Chisora over David Price more and gives David Price a slightly less of a chance. David Price, like I mentioned earlier in the video, taking the fight on short notice. So how in shape is David Price going to be? How technically prepared is he going to be? He doesn't have a whole lot of time to train and work on his cardio and his speed and his accuracy and timing. And he's probably not going to have the right, the stamina going into the fight is probably going to be even worse than usual. He's not really going to have the right preparation. If you're fighting a guy like Chisora, you need to spar against, tough pressure fighters to get used to that type of style. And I just think that David Price is in a position where he's not going to have adequate preparation. So that's pretty much how I see this fight, guys. I don't really know what else to say. Going for Dereck Chisora by a 5th to 7th round knockout. David Price, maybe he could get a knockout in the first 4 rounds, but I don't see that happening. So gonna go with Chisora, but I give Price a puncher's chance. Let me know how you guys think anyway. Thanks for watching, and yeah, God bless.